Ladies Lounge. I'm your host, Angela, and I am poolside with my special guest co-host, Rose Rauch. She is a lender, and so we're going to kind of talk a little bit about, like, what do buyers need for the whole process of lending? What are the fees that you don't even realize that you actually need or you have? And I will let Rose take it away. Hi, Rose. Thanks for having me out here.
Thanks for coming over. I love to share our little oasis back here, our little Rauch resort.
Absolutely beautiful. Views of the lake, and then you got the pool. It's awesome back here.
Yes, on a beautiful
It is a beautiful day. It is kind of hot, too. Oh,
it kind of is.
I'm a little sweaty right now, and it's not because we're doing a live.
So, for those that don't know me, I'm Rose, the mortgage gal at Magnolia Mortgage, and we actually, do a lot of different types of loans and things like that, but the fees are generally just that, okay? They are, you've got closing fees, you've got title fees, you've got fees prior to closing that a lot of buyers don't know or are aware of. And, those can be appraisal fees, right? Home inspection fees, credit report fees, the termite
inspection fees.
Yes.
So some of those fees, like for an inspection, I always recommend my clients having an inspection done, whether it's a new build or whether it's a condo or whatever. So that way you kind of, it's a couple of $100, about $300 to $500, depending on the square footage of the property, and if there's any outbuildings that you want checked. Appraisal fees run around like,
those are between $580 and they can go up to $1,000 depending on if we're doing a condo or not. Those can range a little higher depending on the type of property we're doing. But in general, we're $600 to $650 on average for those appraisal fees.
Yeah. So those are some out-of-pocket costs that you're going to have. That you're going to want to, when you start saving up your money for your down payment or whatever, then you're going to want to have this extra bit of money.
Absolutely.
To cover all that. So, and what else? Because I know we have a lot of times where we have to really, as an agent, I can only educate so much because lending is not my thing. That's why I have wonderful lenders like Rose. That can actually explain the whole process and get you a lender and get you a realtor that's going to explain the process as well as they can so that you understand it. And if you don't understand it the first time they ask, then ask again and again. Because this is important. You're making a major purchase, so make sure that you're aware and you understand all the finances that you're going to have to pay out of pocket. And if you've got a really good realtor and if you've got a really good lender, then no question is dumb, and you can't ask any question too many times. So please don't think, oh, game on, bet. Let's try to see what kind of questions we're going to ask.
There's a lot of different questions, and we do try to make sure that our clients understand they're not dumb. They're only dumb if we don't ask, and then we have to be reactive instead of proactive.
Right.
When we talk about closing costs, you do have a down payment on most of the loan types. So, and that's separate from your actual closing cost, and the seller can contribute monies to your closing costs at the closing table. However, they can't contribute monies to your down payment. So you have to have that money saved.
That's good. Now, what you can do is, if you have a real savvy real estate agent, they can write seller concession for the seller to pay a portion of the closing cost or all of the closing costs, depending on how aggressive you want to make the offer. And everything is negotiable. Everything is negotiable. So, but again, you're going to have money down to cover these, for the down payment. Now, what about down payment assistance?
So there are options for that. Every file is going to be a little different when we talk about down payment assistance. You can get a full, most of those are going to be linked to like an FHA loan that usually requires 3.5% down. We can do a down payment assistance program for those that qualify, to cover that 3.5%. There's also lenders out here that we can utilize
questions that you can ask. We're just trying to give you an idea of what questions you need to ask and what you should be getting the answers for, to make it a little bit easier process. Because I mean, let's face it, buying, selling, anything in real estate, even if you're investing, it's so overwhelming. And if you don't have the right professionals that are in your corner, that have your back, that are looking for the best for you, then it can be a difficult process. So what else would you suggest for buyers to be aware of?
Well, the biggest and first obstacle we need to get through is the pre-approval. Yes, find your real estate agent, but that lender needs to be attached right away.
Right.
Because you don't want to be out here looking for your house and with no budget. You really need to understand what that budget is, and that's where that true pre-approval comes in at, and not a pre-qualification.
Yes, not a pre-qual. Yeah, not a pre-qual, just a pre-approval. And it's really important too, because what happens if you find your dream home and there's it's multiple bids and multiple offers on that home, and you don't have a pre-approval to attach it to the offer, because that will make a difference for the sellers on if they accept your offer or not, if they see the pre-approval. Now, there is a time limit that you have to get your pre-approval letter in, but it's better to just already have the lender, and what's going on and everything, because it makes the process that much smoother.
It does. And a seller is going to be more apt to accept your offer.
Exactly. If they know that you've got the funds, they're going to be more willing to work with you. So the pre-qual versus the pre-approval, if you can explain that.
Absolutely. So the pre-qualification is just, Angela, you're going to give me a call and we're going to talk about the loan process, and you're going to give me your basics. This is my basic income, this is, where I've worked, and I send you the application link and then docs link it.
Yeah.
Well, in that conversation, a lot of times we know whether you can get pre-approved or not.
Right.
But, so that step is just taking that conversation and putting it on a piece of paper. That doesn't really mean a whole lot. The pre-approval step is we're going to get the application, we're going to pull the credit, we're going to also look at your income docs, the W-2s for the last 2 years, your tax returns for those that are self-employed. And oh my goodness, I cannot stress enough on self-employed borrowers getting that pre-approval up front.
Exactly.
We have to analyze those tax returns up front, because there's so many things that go into that, with write-offs and things like that. So what is your actual true income for the mortgage purpose?
Right. And that goes into, like, we live here in a tourist town, so we have a lot of servers, bartenders, and those that rely on tips and don't typically have bank statements. So if you're looking to buy and you want to buy on down the road, what are the processes? What do you need to have them do to get them going?
Getting those, I'm working with several clients right now that aren't ready yet, and we're doing it ahead of time. They haven't even filed their taxes yet, so we're getting them prepared up front. Getting those, pay statements showing what their, commissions and things have been, and more tips, as you said, for servers and bartenders. And then we can compile that and do an average over, a 2-year time frame, and that can, help us with our, income calculations. If you're self-employed and your taxes aren't, what we need it to be for mortgage, that's where we go into the bank statement loan or 1099 loans, to help those those borrowers that aren't, at that
right.
point.
So there's a lot of different options if you're a 1099 employee or if you get tips and everything. But the big thing is, though, is being prepared. Absolutely. Knowing exactly what you're going to need, so that way when you are ready to make an offer and then you are ready to see a home, then we can get it going. So I think this is really good. I think we have some really good info for the buyers out there. Appreciate you tuning in, and be on the lookout, because we're going to have part 2, and it will be coming, here soon. And take it away. All right, take it away, Rose.
Thanks so much, guys. If you have any questions, give Angela and I a call. That's what we're here for. We are the professionals in our industry, and we'd love to help. Have a great day.
Bye.